Opposites Attract by Debjani Chatterjee. Born in India, brought up in several countries due to my father's work in the diplomatic service, and residing presently in the UK, where I have lived for longer than anywhere else, I do have a sense of several homes and find myself moving between different cultures and languages, often within minutes. Prominent among the many aspects of my life that have impacted on my writing is this movement back and forth. An early poem, Voice and Vision, from my first full collection, I Was That Woman, from 1989, celebrates this plurality. I speak in many tongues, my friend. Languages are my inheritance. I move in many cultures, friend. Of necessity I make them mine, lightly treading in so many worlds. As a writer, poet, and storyteller, I have grown up with tales from many cultures, but principally from the lands where I have lived. This too is happily reflected in my writing, in books like Nehemiah and the Bag of Gold, and The Message of Thunder and other plays. Among the genres in which I have engaged are traditional stories from around the world that I have retold or adapted, sometimes as narratives for contemporary children, and sometimes as plays and sketches. Cultures and languages are not the only worlds I inhabit as a writer. Light and shadow must both be embraced, as must creation and destruction. A favorite god is Shiva the destroyer. His cosmic Tandava dance of destruction is an essential prelude to the creation of a new universe. In my poem Tandava, the cosmic serpent Vasuki asserts a role as the churning rope of gods and demons. It refers to a myth I encountered in childhood about how gods and demons, though antagonistic, must at times cooperate in order to achieve mutual gains that not only win them such fabulous treasures as Kalpavriksha, the wish fulfilling tree, Uchchaisravas, Indra's winged horse, or a jar of Amrita, the nectar of immortality, but also create order from the primeval ocean of chaos. Order and chaos are both necessary. Each of us is both God and demon. The Devas or gods in Hindu mythology, although good, often have flaws or human failings. And the Asuras or demons, though mainly bad, will often exhibit human virtues. Humans who take up a space between the gods and demons also have a dual nature, reconciling opposing forces. Writers and artists have a vital role in acting as a conduit. They are Vasuki, the rope that connects the gods and the demons. Later, as an undergraduate at the American University in Cairo, I recall a charismatic lecturer talking about the contrasting deities, Apollo the sun god and Dionysus the god of wine and revelry, both sons of Zeus, and the Apollonian and Dionysian dichotomy that they represent in human affairs. The world needs both, she emphasized. Apollonian rationality, calm and orderliness, but also Dionysian passion abandon, and creativity. This was also the time when I binged on E.M. Forster's short stories, novels, and non-fiction. He replaced Sir Walter Scott as my favorite British novelist. And when I read about how he had befriended another of my literary heroes, Mulk Raj Anand, helping him to find a publisher for his iconoclastic novel Untouchable, I determined that I would visit the author in Cambridge just as soon as I could go to England for postgraduate studies. Forster's Only Connect became my motto. Only connect the prose and the passion, and both will be exalted, and human love will be seen at its height. Live in fragments no longer. This is from Howard's End. I agreed with Forster that nonsense and beauty have close connections. Indian mythology is rich in allegorical stories. One story that fascinates me is of Surya, the sun god, and his two wives, Sanjana and Chaya. The two wives are actually one and the same because Chaya, meaning shadow, is in fact Sanjana's shadow self. Unable to tolerate the scorching heat and blazing light radiating from her husband, Sanjana asks her shadow to substitute for her while she herself flees. It is interesting that for a while Surya remains unaware of the deception and accepts Chaya as his wife and the mother of his children. But Chaya cannot sustain the deception for long. And when he finally learns what has happened, Surya must also recognize his own nature and achieve a compromise by shaving off a portion of his brilliance in order to win back his wife Sanjana. Light and shadow are clearly both needed and interdependent. In many respects, my intimacy with my adopted home, Britain, grew as I fell in love with and eventually married Brian Darcy, an Anglo Irish academic whom I first met as a PhD student at the University of Lancaster. Brian's father, William Darcy, had served in the Royal Air Force and died in India during World War II. During our honeymoon in 1983, Brian and I were the first members of his family to visit his military grave, a square of the Raj, meticulous forever, and in sharp contrast to the next door, native and unkempt Christian cemetery where wild weeds straggle expansive in a blasphemy of tall grass. The quotations are from A Square of the Raj in A Little Bridge from 1997. So, an India Britain connection was already there for us both. My maternal grandfather had visited Britain a few times. My uncle and several cousins had also come here for higher studies, and an aunt had settled in Croydon. Britain's influence on India was especially strong in Bengal, since the East India Company had first settled there, and Calcutta, now back to its original name of Kolkata, was the first capital of the British Raj, and Bengal too reciprocated with a wealth of its own influences, ranging from mulligatawny soup to a host of Bengali words that crept into the English language. For example, jute, chutney, baka, and cot. Brian and I discovered that we had significant experiences and interests in common. There were also many differences. Opposites attract, they say. For us, the differences often seemed intriguing, and they rendered each of us exotic in the other's eyes. The great value that Brian gave to privacy, for instance, meant that he would never open my mail. You'd never open my mail. A principle with you, one that makes no sense to me in marriage. Your English otherness. Were we not two who made a greater one? That quotation comes from When the Telegram Came, from Albino Gecko, 1998. So, in January 1989, when my sister was dying of cancer, and he opened a telegram that we were expecting from India, even though it was addressed to me, the gesture was very special. You slit it open. You wished to spare me its wrenching opening. You spared me the unknowing knowing. It's also from When the Telegram Came. Marriage to Brian and long sojourn in the UK meant that I not only found, and still find, my husband deliciously exotic, but I could view my Indian, and more specifically my Bengali self through a Western gaze, and so appreciate the remarkable strangeness, wonder, and charm in many instances. No doubt my perspective also gave him new insights into his own Anglo Irish heritage. In Bengali language and culture, we rejoice in many quaint peculiarities that often have an inverted logic. For instance, I was taught at an early age that when bidding goodbye, I must never say that I am going. It was more courteous and hopeful to say that I am coming. Words are powerful, and there is a sense of finality about goodbye. So we do not wish to tempt fate by pronouncing the words, I am going, unless we genuinely do not wish to return. No wonder Bengalis appreciate the French au revoir, which seems far more polite and positive than the English goodbye. Perhaps even more interesting is what happens when Bengalis run out of food. Rice, a Bengali staple, is important in some Hindu rituals. It denotes fertility in Hindu weddings, and many Christian weddings too make a similar use of rice. And we consider it an auspicious item that also symbolizes Annapurna, the gracious goddess who bestows food. So, one should take care that the home never runs out of rice. And if the amount of grain is nil, or has fallen below an acceptable level, one should never say that there is no rice, or even that we are short of rice. The correct etiquette is to say that we have an abundance of rice. Of course, there are elements of superstition, tradition, and historical famine also at play here. Brian introduced me to elements of Western music that he loves. For example, the poems and songs of Leonard Cohen, country and Western songs, and Irish folk music. But I could not interest him in my favorite music, Shama Shangeet, or Bengali devotional songs to Mother Kali, Robindra Shangeet, or songs composed by the great Bengali Nobel laureate Rabindranath Tagore, and Qawwalis, or Muslim devotional songs. Some things are obviously an acquired taste. We introduced each other to some items of food and drink too. Brian now loves rice, especially with curries and dal, almost as much as he does potatoes. Winemaking was one of his creative hobbies, so from being a teetotaler, I graduated to imbibing the occasional celebratory glass of wine. And mindful of my uncultivated palate, Brian took to making sweet fruit wines like apricot and peach. During the coronavirus pandemic, I have been following the news regarding lockdowns in different countries. An intriguing human interest story repeated in various international media was that of twins, a boy and a girl, born in India to a couple who decided to name them Corona and COVID. Again, using my Western perspective, I might question why parents would name their children after a killer virus. Indians, after all, are known for giving their children names with beautiful and inspirational meanings, names that can sometimes be very hard to live up to. The great villains of Indian literature, Ravana from the Ramayana and Duryodhana from the Mahabharata, have names that are conspicuously absent among many generations of children, even though in true epic tradition, neither villain is totally bad. They have some good qualities and saving graces to make them worthy opponents for the heroes. The mother of the twins explained to a reporter that the names Corona and COVID would remind them of the many hardships of lockdown. Moreover, although coronavirus itself was dangerous and life threatening, the pandemic had also made people focus on sanitation, hygiene, and instill other good habits. I reflect too that Bengalis invariably have nicknames, and these are the ones in daily use, not the formal names that carry weighty and grand meanings. And as regards nicknames, there is a very different type of thinking behind their selection. Qazi Nazrul Islam, the rebel poet of Bengal, someone I admire immensely, was nicknamed Dukhumiya by his parents. The name means man of sorrow. And it does indeed reflect the poet's extremely hard life. But this was not the intention. A Bengali saying goes that there must be as much weeping as there is laughter. And the choice of a name like Dukhumiya points to an acceptance of this truth. Nazrul's parents also named him Dukhumiya in the same protective manner that many an Indian parent decorates their child's face with a black spot to ward off the evil eye, or tries not to praise their child too much. Nicknames are given with humor and affection. One of my first cousins is nicknamed Buri, meaning old woman. When her marriage was arranged to a suitable young man, my aunt and uncle were delighted to discover that the groom's nickname was Buro, or old man. The wedding invitation cards gave the couples formal names, but my uncle, who had a great sense of humor, put up a huge banner across the road in front of their house. It read, for all the neighborhood to see, Buri weds Buro. The most important lesson for me as a writer has been the understanding that being between two sets of names or two or more worlds is a great and natural place for a writer. Just as I feel that every land in which I have lived is my own, in my micro pamphlet Smiling at Leopards from 2018, my introductory poem Choice makes a definitive statement about choosing this in between and all embracing space. Choice. Every avatar must tussle with fate. How much is human? How much is divine? Even Buddhas battle with destiny. Paradox is the human condition. To be born, to die, and in dying live, to go beyond, to be or not to be. Not for me to choose between this and that. Should I mime or sing, soft shuffle or dance, understand male, female, and all between? Should I embrace the solitary state or seek communion with the universe? Praise the hero's stance or the villain's dream? Multiple personalities are mine, and Joseph's rainbow coat and his brothers. Both Rama and Ravana possess me. Art for art's sake, or for a higher end, character or plot, comedy or not. Our destiny is mapped, yet we have choice. No, a rock and a hard place, both are mine. A fusion of Scylla and Charybdis. I am a poet. I choose to choose all. And in my choosing, I also choose to share.